Greetings guys, namaste, hey welcome. This video is the April 2019 global predictions using the Psi cards, which are these ones here, as well as two from the Morgan Greer Tarot. So I've been doing this sort of series of predictions for some years now, and yeah, I think it becomes a little more convoluted as time goes on. Also, some of the cards' meanings change a little bit as well, or they get added to. The readings technically are in the process of evolution. I think most things are in reality. Nothing stays static. Everything is constantly changing. And I think the way people do predictions and the meanings of cards are also very movable and free-flowing. So what I will do is start with a couple of these first. If you've been listening to any of the other videos I've uploaded lately, I talked a little bit about the energies for the month of April, and they're still very, very active. There's a lot of movement in our planets across the sky. There's a lot of movement within people's emotions on the planet. That's partly because of astrological lineups and such like. So of course Gaia also feels all of these movements as well and activities. I think we just are in fairly turbulent times. There's a lot of change, quite frankly. There's just change going on, change in how we have perceived things, how we've done things, how governments have been run, how countries, how we handle ourselves personally. So there is a lot happening at the moment, and I do think it makes predictions a little more, as I say, sometimes difficult to nail down would probably be a good term. So I'll pick a couple of cards from here. In the March readings that have just been, the clock card came out from the Psi, or the machine card came out from this deck, and I often associate it with time anomalies as well as engines. Well, there were lots of engine problems with planes and the boats, but there have definitely been some strange time anomalies. Now I know some of you who follow the channel and who I talk with from time to time understand what I'm on here, what I'm on about here. The time wave zero anomaly, the Terence McKenna, project as such. So there has been, from my perspective, a whole lot of really strange time anomalies that did happen in March. And in fact, some of them were yesterday, which was the 28th of March, or sorry, the 27th. There was almost like a whole Mandela time effect event occurring. I'm not going to go into that with great depth here, because it's a very convoluted series of perspectives and energies, but yeah, there's something going on at the moment. So let's see what we've got with the shuffling from here. What is the first card to come out? The Five of Pentacles. Not a favourite one for many people by any stretch of the imagination. The Ace of Cups, which is actually very much favoured. I think we had this last month. We had the two warriors as such who turned up. There was the Four of Swords, if I recall, with the warrior down on the ground, and then there was the Knight of Cups offering the love. So this time we've got money and pentacles and wounded people again, but we've still got a lot of love around. So if we come to this one first, the Five of Pentacles often refers to monetary glitches, so things not flowing as well. And if we're talking this is global, there might be some global tenacity for money to have some glitches. Now in reality, Brexit was meant to happen at the end of March, and I think that has now been put off until sometime in April. But as they get closer to making a decision, there may be a lot of up and downs with either the EU finances and the British pound, because they'll all be wanting to separate and go their own way. It becomes very difficult and convoluted. But money seems to be striking a little bit of a negative patch here in April. It's possible that it's transitory and that it is not necessarily for the long duration, because this card can mean, in the short term. It could also mean that it is up and down, so we might see a lot of different fluctuations, and this could be for a lot of different global financial markets, including the American market. I see our dollar just dropped a little bit yesterday. That's the New Zealand dollar. There's the Chinese, there's the yen, there's the euro, there's the Russian dollars, there's Australian, Canadian, you know, Asian dollars. So wherever we go, there might be something that is detrimental with money. It could be deeper than that. There could be issues that come to the surface about where money no longer is, or where people thought there was money, it is gone. This could be to do again with governments. Like some governments may have been saying, oh look, we're in a fine, healthy state, we've got plenty of money behind us, but when the books are done properly, it turns out that money is not there, or missing, or what was anticipated to come in through either tax funds or something else has been misappropriated or not there. There's also possibly with that that some big companies who have been doing well on the share market may give a really poor dividend, or may go into bankruptcy, or may be in financial trouble. And again, these could be global companies. Now, the other perspective of this card is the two people that we see in the picture, and I'm hoping it's kind of a hindsight message, but it would appear, if you look closely enough, that the lady, she has a headscarf on, almost like a Muslim might be wearing, and the man is very wounded and he looks like he has been through a battle. Well, of course, this just happened recently in Christchurch, quite literally, and it was outside their mosque where the mass shootings took place, and this looks a little bit like a temple or a church or a place of worship in the background. So perhaps the feeling of that is still coming and being emanated around the globe, because there certainly has been global outpouring of love and help and support for the people that suffered these attacks against them. And there certainly has been a lot of money raised around it as well. So I'm hoping that this doesn't indicate any issues with their money that's been raised one way or another. I hope there's no misappropriation of funds there. So if we come back to these two people, I'm hoping that doesn't infer any more potential attacks or any more harm with whatever religion we're talking about here, or minority people. It doesn't just have to be a religious sect, it can be race related, it can be your sexuality related, or gender related, or country related, but it does have the feeling of fighting, damage, you know, you've been wounded, people are hurt. But the good part is this, we come back to the Ace of Cups. It is a very, you know, positive card with a lot of benevolent energies that surge through it. And the energies that come are from the spiritual collective, or from the heart. So they're energies of love, and that's a very emotive card. It's not so much a physical card. It's about standing united as one. You know, there is no segregation. Love, in theory, doesn't have boundaries. It doesn't have a wall up saying, well, you're gay, I hate you, or you're black, I hate you, or you're, you know, white, you're no good. It doesn't have that. Love is boundless and it has no limits. So this is the card that represents that. So there could be a huge amount of love around the planet at all sorts of different levels. Remember too that for the particular you know, Christian faith, there's Easter in April, which is a very powerful energy, and we feel the white light energy coming down to the planet from above, just like this white light in here, and it can sometimes literally pour onto the planet, offering hope and peace and love. So there are many positives within this card. It is also conceptual about new ideas, going in new directions that are born from something that wants to offer peace and harmony. So two totally opposite cards, again the same as last month. Let's see what the Psi cards have to do with what they're pulling out here. Now the Psi cards work on collective consciousness. So this is for collective conscious reading for global prediction for April for 2019. What is in store? The Sage. There's nothing wrong with the sage, he's okay. The stranger, well, he's a stranger, we don't know much about him, do we? The prison, death. Interesting, the money under the ground, it really matches very closely with that money. This card traditionally in the side deck would mean that finances are tight, that you've got to dig deep to find them, you've got to work really hard to bring them up to the surface because they're hidden. That's just one of the meanings of the card. The home. I might even pull one more. Actually, what I'll do is I'll turn up the bottom of the deck and see what it is, and it's the Tower. So I've seen worse, to be honest. They're very dark, like they kind of just have a blur, like a brown flat energy. They're not very bright, you know, when you look at this one that's bright and this one that's bright, but all the rest have got this kind of brownish thing going on in the background, a bit muted, a bit flat, a bit dull. The Sage, though, he represents great ideas and intelligence, and well, he's sitting there writing. He is the writer of physics or mathematics or chemistry. He perhaps provides alchemic understanding of life, of how to change something from one form to another. So he can be seen when there is great propensity for new concepts or ideas in the realms of physics or astronomy or technology or things along those lines, because he shows us great intellect, so he works with his mind. He also pertains to things to do with space and knowledge of. So sometimes this means understanding ideas about space or new events around our space and our planet, or the planets that surround us, or things that cross through space. So it can have to do with technological equipment that we are putting up into space, so new rockets being launched, something happening to launches or rockets that are already up there, or satellites, or the space lab. There's a possibility that it can be referring to things like talk about landing on the moon, or Mars missions, or moon missions, or space exploration, satellites that have gone out beyond Pluto, things like that, new planets coming. It can also talk about activity such as things coming from space, so maybe asteroids, meteorites, events that might be unseen or unknown of, and they sort of turn up. It can also, I think, sometimes represent something like the Pope, because he is dressed a little bit like the Pope there. So sometimes we'll see things to do with the Pope or possibly the Roman Catholic Church in the news. The Stranger, well, he keeps a fair bit hidden from us. Is it a woman? Is it a man? Is it androgynous? Behind a door, you know, there's something about not telling us a lot of information. He has this kind of metal looking glove on there. I don't even know if you can see it very well. Which makes me think of the rule of the Iron Hand with communist countries. So sometimes this card can represent communist activity. Or leaders, you know, the leaders of communist countries, or what in our minds we used to think of as being communist. So sometimes Russia is also included into this, and there's a lot of there's a lot of different communist smaller countries around as well. Like there's Cuba, there's North Korea, there's possibly Kim Jong-un, there's China. I mean, that's just a few off the top of my head, but I know there are more. So it can be pertaining to them, or to political agenda around them, to secret activities that they are undertaking that could be undermining various things. Well, let's hope it's not the letting off of a missile, because the Sage could be learning more about missiles. He could be working for one of these communist parties, and it could be increasing nuclear activity. That would be a real shame if that was the case. I know Kim Jong-un apparently had gone back to North Korea after the meeting with Trump, and he had activated some underground base, and they had a small earthquake there early March, I think it was, so they had detonated another nuclear bomb. So there could be more movement around that with him. It may also be that perhaps a couple of communist parties get together and do something, so form some sort of triad or collaboration between themselves. This prison has a few different meanings. You're feeling really trapped. We had this kind of feeling with the cave last month, but this is feeling very trapped and stuck. Also gloomy, personally, like, down, anxious and depressed. He's in chains, so he's chained up. He can't get out. So chained up to a belief, or chained up to a paradigm, chained into a situation. It could have to do with literal prisons. Sometimes it does, and there might be an issue with a prison globally, like a fire, a mass fire, or a breakout that sometimes occurs when the prison card is here. But it definitely tells us that things are kind of locked down. So there's a lockdown feeling going on, and it creates tension or anxiety and a feeling of like, I can't get out, I'm lost, I'm stuck. So this can also relate to caves and underground as well. But one of the most interesting portions of the card is the beaming of light coming through the window. And that light, from my inference, is the sun. So when that card comes out, I often project the sun's energies into it. And the sun is in its solar minimum at the moment, but we have had a few flares recently. So I'm thinking that maybe we get a few more activations from the sun, whether they are big flares or coronal mass ejections or something unusual about the sun. Now remember, when that happens, it can create weather patterns here on Earth that can be destructive. If there is a big flare that heads our way, the sun also affects us as humans at the emotional and the physical length. So it could be that there is a lot of electromagnetic direction for us in the month of April that sort of upsets people or offsets us or heads us in odd emotional states that could be part of this whole prison card. We come to the death card, and it's not a particularly nice card. It's very dark, and on the screen it looks even darker than it does to my eyes. There's kind of like little poppies around here, and the interesting thing is, for New Zealand in April, so New Zealand and Australia, it's what's known as Anzac Day, which is the commemoration day of the Battle of Gallipoli, I think it was in the First World War, where thousands and thousands of men lost their lives fighting. So this card I've often thought of as being representative, because of the poppies, of the people who have been and gone and lost their lives due to warring on our planet. And it is the commemoration month for that in April, and there will be a lot of different commemorations around the world for the First and Second World War as well. So that's part of the meaning for the card. But the other meaning, sadly, is, because that's a mountain, so it can actually mean mountains and underground activity and volcanic activity, hidden stuff going into the dark again, because it's very, very dark. But it can mean mass deaths, so mass death events, which unfortunately we'd already seen in New Zealand and Christchurch in March. So we come back to the money. We've kind of done full circle with the money, which we spent quite a bit of time talking about in the Five of Pentacles. So money definitely is underground, has gone underground. So there are going to be some sort of financial difficulties with it. You know, it might not be the best time to invest. But in saying that, sometimes when the markets fall, it can be a really good time to buy because you're buying at a low price. So it's not always a bad thing when there is a fall or things come to a bit of a stagnation, because that is actually how a lot of people make more money, by buying when the markets are down. The other thing about this is the bare, barren fields. There's something about crop shortages, unexpected shortages or loss of crops, or crops that haven't managed to grow, perhaps due to dry heat or no water, or the land becoming barren for some reason, either burnt out or dried out or washed out. Also those coins, or whatever they are in the base, they kind of look like antiquity. So sometimes when this card comes out, I've seen new discoveries being unearthed around the planet, and they can date back for a very long time. They can sometimes be wealth, like finding hidden treasure or amazing artifacts, and they help us to date the planet and to give us new information and ideas around the timing of the human life path and where we have lived and what we were doing. This could also reference that there may be something like a new strike of oil or silver, or possibly gold, but these look very silvery, somewhere around the planet, and possibly in a dry, arid area. So that's kind of the positive side of the money perspective, and the card could offer that as well. The home card is a house with a fire and a cat. So sometimes this will reference issues with animals again. It could be pets per se, but it could be more global animal die-offs. It also references homes, an issue to do with homes, and there's a fire there. So sometimes this can be suggestive of buildings that catch on fire or burn down. So there might be an outbreak of fires somewhere where buildings are affected. It also references home to me, as in my home, which is New Zealand. So there's a potential here that something is going on in New Zealand that is also going to be, you know, again in the news for some reason globally in April. So I'm not sure what that could be, but it usually doesn't mean necessarily really positive stuff. Although, to be fair, we certainly have seen our Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern stand up and do particularly well over the last month, and she looks kind of very saintly very often. So that can also represent earthquakes, actually, shaking and quakes and homes damaged. And this one is not dissimilar, because it doesn't tell us a lot. In the tarot, the Tower card means great disruption and, you know, things faltering from the foundations up and falling over. So there's a possibility that this Tower card also means the same, volatile disruption. However, it does give me the feeling of very old buildings, so somewhere around places like Egypt or up through the Middle East, where buildings like this are more like, sorry, did I say Egypt? I meant Europe. That was weird. Maybe that was a Freudian slip. Anyhow, places like Europe, where buildings like this exist, that there can be issues around them. So again, damage to beautiful old buildings of antiquity, sometimes through earthquakes, but sometimes also through amazingly powerful surging storms. Because in the background of this card, this cloud is very wet. It looks like it's raining, and so I sometimes imbue this card with extreme weather events of heavy rain that literally turns into inland tsunamis and floods villages and cities and damages them and cuts them off, so you get this whole inland tsunami energy. So it can be associated with weather patterns like that, which could come from things like the sun or earthquake and shaking. So those were the main messages that seemed to come about. They're talking more fundamentally, I think, about people and energies. I'm not seeing anything that's giving me much here about weather patterns as such, but it just depends where the focus is and where really everyone else's focus is in the world at the moment. So please leave your comments and your thoughts about what you think the cards reference or mean. Perhaps this sage up here, this popely figure, one way or another is trying to create peace and keep things in harmony. There has been a lot of trouble for the Roman Catholic Church. They're going through a real messy bunch of issues at the moment, so whether or not they're trying to rectify that or get some peace out of it, I'm not sure, but that's another potential. So there we are. Thank you guys for tuning in, and have a safe and happy April ahead. Much love everyone. Namaste.